But today's event features language identity and education in South Asia, features Christina Davis, who is the Associate Professor of Anthropology at Western Illinois University. Her research and teaching interests concern intersections between language and digital media practices, multilingual education, and conflict, with a geographical focus on Sri Lanka and India. She is the author of The Struggle for a Multilingual Future, Youth and Education in Sri Lanka. And our other speaker is Chaise LaDousa, who is a Syracuse alum. He received his PhD in anthropology from there. He is professor of anthropology at Hamilton College. His research and teaching interests lie at the intersection of language and culture and include literacy and visual culture, multilingual education, and political economy. He's the author of Hindi is Our Ground, English is Our Sky, Education, Language, and Social Class in Contemporary India. If you have any questions during this talk, please put your Q&A in chat and we'll share those afterwards. This talk is part of the Cornell Syracuse South Asia Consortium's Global Voices in Education series, designed to introduce faculty and students in schools of education to international perspectives on education throughout South Asia. And welcome Chase and Christy to Ithaca and Syracuse virtually, if not in reality.
Oh. Wait.
Thanks very much, Dan and Amira, Kathy and Gloria for having us. Thank you everyone for coming, to giving us a chance to discuss some new research that Christy and I are working on. We're working on this research with Nishant Choksi at IIT Gandhinagar. He is our research collaborator, and we're appreciative of his invitation that ultimately led to the interviews that we'll share with you. We'd also like to thank E. Annamalai and Katie Hardy, who have given us some feedback on our project so far as well. Both of them are friends of ours, and we appreciate their input. All right, just like in the United States, many languages are spoken in the nations of South Asia. And just like in the United States, differences between languages spoken at home and at school can become a burden for some students and contribute to students' problems in school. However, school systems rarely consider the ways that students themselves reflect on these dynamics. In India, almost everyone believes that they have a mother tongue that embodies their true self, but their actual sociolinguistic situations are often much more complicated. Post-colonial education policies have created a context where young Indian adults are expected to not only produce multiple standardized languages, including English, but also to identify with language in discrete and categorical ways that are at a removed from their lived experiences of language. Sometimes the student's mother tongue coincides with a standardized language. And you'll see that in the excerpts that we present, but often it doesn't. Indian students who sometimes travel to different states and regions for higher education feel that their linguistic skills are inadequate, regardless of their actual competency. They also feel that they cannot occupy spaces in language that are free from judgment of themselves and others. At the crux of this problem is that so much of higher education revolves around the pressure to read, write, and speak English. But English is actually absent from national language policies, something we'll talk about at the end of our presentation. Our talk today will draw on new research to discuss the Indian University students' linguistic angst, which we define as the feeling of unsettlement or inadequacy when it comes to the place of language in their lives. Our talk, we'll do four things during our talk. We'll give you an overview of language policy in India for some context, especially for those who aren't that familiar with South Asia. We'll review the notion of mother tongue to give you a sense of how students talk about language during the interviews that we conducted. We'll describe the scene of our research at the Indian Institute of Technology in Gandhinagar. The Indian Institute of Technology is a world-famous institute, a set of institutes in India, and Gandhinagar is one of its newest campuses in the state of Gujarat in Western India. And we'll offer some reflections on interview excerpts we collected while there. And we'll end with some concluding thoughts, as well as what Christy, Nishant, and I plan to do with this project. We have excerpts from our interviews that we will share with you, and through a screen share as we review them. And we'll refer to them during our talk, and some are pretty lengthy, so we will hopefully be able to give you some time to read them as we discuss them.
Students' educational experiences in India have been shaped by policies passed following India's independence from British colonial rule in 1948. Hindi is India's official language, and English has status as a subsidiary official language. English was to be phased out after 15 years of the nation's founding, but its usefulness extended its official designation indefinitely. In 1968, the government passed the three-language formula in order to facilitate communication between the different linguistic regions of the country. It prescribed that 2 of the 3 languages must be native to India. Thus, in many cases, the third language taught in schools is English. Throughout India, there has been debate about which languages should be offered across different states and regions. While few schools in the north offer any of the Dravidian languages spoken in the south, there has been antipathy in Tamil Nadu and other areas of the south to instruction in Hindi. Although not prescribed in the nation's language policies, schools in India are categorized by their medium of instruction, or the language in which interaction occurs in a classroom. Medium is not just confined to curriculum and instruction, but extends into social and institutional life. Institutions are classified by their medium, so school may be Hindi medium or English medium. People also describe themselves and others by the medium through which their education is being or was offered. English is geographically widespread, but schools associated with it are often thought to be prestigious, and they're usually private and expensive. In contrast, recent legislation associated with universal education, the Right to Education Act of 2009, has relegated vernacular medium schools to the poor. When someone in Delhi says, "I'm English medium," for example, they locate themselves in ways that pertain to caste, class, gender, and regional and national identity. So in summary, throughout India, people robustly associate English medium education with middle-class status and the possibility for upward social mobility.
All right, and now I'm going to, hopefully this will work, share. All right, we're going to start by introducing a student, an engineering undergraduate, who talked about mother tongue, the notion of mother tongue in an interview. This is an excerpt from that interview. So she says, whatever we speak, we initially, that word, we listened. So when we got born, at that same time, we used to hear those words from our mother. And that's why we speak them. And that's why we get the feeling of, it means when we drink water, mummy. Mother used to say that. Mum, pili, or drink. So we got the feeling like this is mom. The baby initially says, I need mom. That is for water. So like water, we listen, that we speak. And so that's why every individual has his or her mother tongue. Throughout India and other nations of South Asia, people often think about language through the concept of mother tongue, literally the tongue of one's mother. The Indian census has used mother tongue as a category since its inception in 1881, but its definition has changed over time. Currently, it is defined as the language spoken in childhood by the person's mother to the person. If the mother died in infancy, the language mainly spoken in the person's home in childhood will be the mother tongue. In case of doubt, the language mainly spoken in the household will be recorded. Those are instructions from the census. Recently, journalists and scholars have criticized the use of mother tongue as a census category because it doesn't give a full sense of people's sociolinguistic environments. One reason for this is that even though a person may speak multiple languages in the home, they must select one mother tongue on the census. For example, on the most recent census, a large number of people put the classical language Sanskrit down as mother tongue, even though it is not their primary spoken language. So here, the sense of mother tongue as a primary identity, as pertaining to religion, let's say, contradicts the notion of it as a language in which you use or in which you speak as a mode of communication. As we illustrate in our findings, people's understanding of mother tongue goes far beyond the way it is defined in the census. Also, the standardized varieties of languages offered in schools, whether English, Hindi, Gujarati, or Sanskrit, rarely correspond to the languages or mother tongues that students actually speak at home. In this project, we seek to understand how Indian university students relate linguistic policies and practices to their lived experiences in the classroom, at home, and on campus.
We incorporate interviews conducted by Chaise LaDousa, Nishant Chokshi, and 2 graduate students in January 2020 at IIT Gandhinagar, prestigious university in the state of Gujarat on the west coast of India. The students were in BA and MA programs in humanities and social sciences, as well as engineering. Some interviews were one-on-one and others were done in groups. Now, students at IIT come from varied religious, regional, class, and caste backgrounds. In hour-long interviews, we ask questions related to how they define and conceptualize their mother tongue in relation to their life histories and their experience adapting to university life. Many of the students who come to IIT are leaving their families and home states and regions for the first time, which can make them feel insecure. When they arrive, they're expected to manage linguistic and academic expectations in which they are often unprepared. They also have to navigate new friendships in the classroom, on campus, and in their student hostels. Students who studied in the English medium schools have an advantage over students who studied in the vernacular medium, as they studied in various Indian languages. However, most students struggle to improve their English spoken and written skills when they first arrive on campus. And although the university is located in Gujarat, with Gujarati as a state language, Hindi functions as a common language outside the classroom, such as in the hallways, canteens, and hostels. Students who do not speak Hindi well, including those from southern states, use English as a main mode of communication until their Hindi improves. And it is clear that while English is often used as a common language among the students, it's very rare that interactions are only in English.
The interviews revealed students' different conceptions of mother tongue. Many of the students held the view that a mother tongue is a language in which they feel the most comfortable using, whether in speech or writing, and some discussed their poetry even. This fits in with a sense of mother tongue as a language of primary socialization, or a language you grow up with, to which you have a high level of competency. Some students invoke the current census definition in conceptualizing it as a language actually spoken by their mother. One student, however, laughed at this literal definition in noting that his mother tongue is actually the language spoken by his father. Several students related mother tongue to identify categories such as ethnicity, while others debated its connection to a region or a place. Others invoked the census definition in discussing whether it is ascribed or achieved. We found that while students initially spoke about the idea of a mother tongue, like it was simple and straightforward, the interviews revealed its complexity. While almost all of the students thought that everyone has a mother tongue, in fact, save one student, a South Indian MA student who grew up in Delhi, here's the one, stated in a defiant tone that he doesn't have a mother tongue because his predominant language is English. And here's the excerpt. He discussed how his mother's first language is Tamil and his father's first language is Malayalam, but that Hindi and English were also spoken in the home. Students from similar sociolinguistic backgrounds might describe themselves as having multiple mother tongues. By choosing to say that he doesn't have one at all, he was likely seeking to identify himself as distinct from his peers by virtue of his strong competency in English. It is a common belief in India that English cannot be your mother tongue if you are non-European. But some Indians have recently put it down on the census. In some interviews, students called each other out on their claims to a particular mother tongue. One student from the state of Rajasthan in northern India insisted at multiple points in the interview that his mother tongue is Hindi. He also spoke in Hindi a lot through the English interview, as if to perform his mother tongue. But then it came out that his father spoke another regional language common in the region, Mewari. Mewari is like many regional languages varieties throughout the Hindi belt or area of Hindi-speaking northern India. Some people consider these varieties languages, and some consider them dialects of Hindi, and actually professional linguists argue about this. He didn't mention his mother's predominant language, but it is unlikely that it is standardized. A student from Andhra Pradesh, whose mother tongue is her state language, Telugu, challenged him on the idea that Hindi is his mother tongue, probably because she thought it would be Mewari. When he initially named Hindi as his mother tongue, he was simplifying his complex sociolinguistic situation. He grew up speaking many languages and dialects, after all. But as was also the case with the South Indian student from Delhi, who said he didn't have a mother tongue, as you saw in excerpt 1, he was also seeking to position or identify himself in a way that he found desirable. It's common throughout northern India for speakers to identify Hindi as a mother tongue instead of a regional language because of the prestige it confers in being India's official language. By the end of the interview, the Andhra student seemed to realize that naming a mother tongue wasn't as easy or straightforward for other students as it is for her. In her case, her mother tongue corresponds to her home, local, and state language.
Overall, we found that students' discussions revealed linguistic angst, which we define as a feeling of unsettlement when it comes to the place of language in their lives. This linguistic angst emerges from two factors. Students feel that having a mother tongue is an inevitable part of one's identity, And to describe their mother tongue, they often draw on locales, circumstances of upbringing, and language distinctions. From the point of view of schooling and the standardized languages it presents, these notions of mother tongue can become worrisome or messy because they implicate students in positions that are complex and inadequate. The second source of angst is that no matter how well they are prepared for the academic and linguistic challenges of university life, they feel that their oral and written skills in different languages are simply not good enough. At IIT, students widely express this feeling with regard to English, but it certainly was not limited to it. When a female Malayali student was asked if any of her classmates struggle with language, she tellingly started talking about English, assuming that any with English. She mentioned that incoming students are required to take a written English course to prepare them for academic life at IIT. This refers to excerpt 3. Even when the students explicitly spoke about Hindi or other languages in the interviews, the pressure they feel to competently speak, read, and write English was always present. And while they did express self-consciousness about their English, they also spoke about its usefulness, such as in speaking to people who don't know Hindi. They talked about how they texted their friends in English, as well as in Indian languages, but written in English. But they would also favorably compare their mother tongues to English. For instance, several students talked about how they enjoyed writing poetry in their mother tongues rather than in English. And it was interesting that quite a few students did talk about their poetry writing, which they do as more just a fun activity for themselves. The students we interviewed were very strong, who were very strong in English, and they were typically humanities and social science students rather than engineering students. They mentioned how they were lacking in various Indian languages. The South Indian student from Delhi in excerpt 1, who stated that he didn't have a mother tongue and it positioned him as a competent English speaker, revealed a feeling of inadequacy about not being more competent in Tamil, his mother's first language, Malayalam, his father's first language, and Hindi, which is spoken in his home city of Delhi. He even mentioned that his mother criticizes him for not speaking more Tamil when they go to visit relatives in Tamil Nadu. It often seemed that his proficiency in elite variety of English might distance or even alienate him from his friends at IIT or his peers, a point that has been discussed in research on English and Tamil language practices in both southern India and Sri Lanka. He referred to his English as elite in several parts of the interview and incorporated words that are more common in English academic registers than everyday conversations. Our other students spoke of English and their mother tongues as if they were in competition. Several students say they regretted the fact that switching to English medium schooling at the secondary level meant that they did not become competent writers in their mother tongues. Another student regretted not speaking Bhojpuri, which her grandmother spoke. Bhojpuri, like Mewari mentioned earlier, is a regional language variety in the Hindi belt. Several students explicitly referred to language and linguistic identifications as conflicted. They also seemed aware that discussions of language are always highly political. At the beginning of an interview, a Malayali Muslim student from the state of Kerala frankly stated that she isn't comfortable speaking any language. She said that because she's from an uneducated family, she didn't grow up speaking much English. And although she did study English in school, she said the first time she fully spoke English was actually her interview for admissions to university. But she said she isn't comfortable in her mother tongue of Malayalam either, because the dialect she speaks immediately socially locates her as a Muslim. She noted that her variety of Malayalam is a particular object of ridicule in Kerala comedy shows. She said her friends at IIT make fun of both her Malayalam and her English. And while she notes that she does know some standardized Malayalam, her dialect evidently comes out when she speaks, particularly with her friends. But at the same time, she feels insecure about speaking Malayalam. She has great affection for it. She mentioned that even the sight of the curly letters of the script make her feel comfortable and at ease. And she mentioned that when she writes Malayalam poetry, she always writes it on pen and paper because writing the letters is part of the experience.
Apologies. Our final thoughts, our conclusion. Literature and linguistic anthropology discusses how speakers often feel pressure to command standard languages taught in schools, but also to be competent in a vernacular, which they use in local contexts, such as on the street or in shop. As rooted in India's multilingualism and multifaceted language policies, Indian university students do not just struggle to be competent in 2 languages, but to command multiple standardized languages, including English and local vernaculars. While the idea of medium divides schools and their languages, it does not exhaust the language varieties relevant to students because students speak more languages and dialects than what are taught in schools. Our interviews show that the students struggle to make sense of the relationships between these varieties and their implications for their academic and social lives. Recently, the Indian government has revisited its language policies in stating that no language should be imposed on a state. In fact, they've released the new education policy just recently. But these policies are not likely to improve the feeling of angst that one gets when one listens to students reflect on languages of schooling with respect to the other languages they know. Indeed, the government's new education policy fetishizes mother tongue as its way of identifying languages by making explicit that all students should be educated in their mother tongue. But it's likely that the languages offered in school will be state or regional languages rather than the languages and dialects that students actually use at home and with their families. These include, of course, tribal languages. But significantly, the new policies do not even mention English. Thus, as English is almost explicitly avoided in official language policies that promote nationalism, it remains a crucial aspect of social inequality, with some students having access to private English medium schools and others, of course, not. By taking students' own reflections on language and identity seriously, teachers and administrators might better understand what challenges their students face as they seek educational opportunities. And of course, now we're not just talking about India. This point is relevant to the United States, where students are likely to reflect on language and its place in their lives in ways that schools and universities' policies are likely to ignore. From here, from this presentation, Christy and I plan to write a manuscript and submit it to a journal for consideration. Christy and I also were planning to travel to Gujarat to visit IIT, to visit our colleague Nishant Choksi, and conduct further field work. But because of the pandemic, we plan to do additional interviews by Zoom very soon. The project has been incredibly fruitful. Students want to talk quite eagerly about their linguistic lives, and our greatest appreciation, of course, goes to them. Thank you very much.